Caldera. So I'll be asking Councillor Nicol then to take over chair of the meeting. Clerk Parkin, can you please advise us what our procedural bylaw says about what happens as far as losing members of council or our live stream?
Yes, thank you, Worship. Good evening, everyone. In accordance with our procedural bylaw, if the live stream does go down for any reason, we will continue to try to reconnect for 10 minutes. If we're unsuccessful at reconnecting the broadcast, then the meeting will automatically end, recess, and the remaining items will be placed onto the next council agenda. If we lose a few members, we can recess and allow them to try to reconnect during that time as well, and then reassess once we determine whether they'll be able to reconnect this evening or not.
Thank you, Clerk Parkin. And now that we've discussed it, I would suggest it won't happen because we're prepared. So I would welcome everybody again this evening and call this meeting to order. We do have quorum and regrets from Deputy Mayor Davidson, and I will pass it on to Councillor Eisses for the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Worship. The town of Innisfil acknowledges that the town of Innisfil is situated on treaty land that is steeped in rich Indigenous history. The town also acknowledges that this land is the traditional territories of the First Peoples of Turtle Island. It is shared between the Anishinaabe peoples of Boselli First Nation, Chippewas of Rama First Nation, and Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation, and we thank them for generations of stewardship. The meeting place is still home to many Indigenous people, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. The town acknowledges the forced sacrifices that are the foundation of Canadian society today. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll now move to item 2, which is the open forum, and I would ask the clerk's office if there was any open forum participants. I see we have none registered. So we'll go to item 3, which is approval of the agenda for March the 23rd. We do have one amendment, which was in the housekeeping bylaw, where there was some additional wording required in that recommendation. So I would ask Councillor Eisses and Councillor Van Berkel if they would move and second the approval of the agenda as amended, and ask if there's any questions or comments. Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried. Next, I'll ask if there's any disclosures of interest, conflict, or pecuniary in tonight's agenda. Seeing none, if one becomes apparent to you, please bring it to our attention at that time. Next is item 5, presentations and petitions. We have none. We do have delegation, however, by some invited guests. So I would invite Kirsten McFarlane and Jerry Hanna to please turn on their video and audio and to proceed whenever you are ready. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for that introduction. So my name is Kirsten McFarlane. I'm working with Greenland Consulting, and I'm joined today by Jim Hartman, who is also with the Greenland, as well as Jerry Hanna, who is the president and CEO of Clearflow Group. So today we're here to discuss the Innisfil Erosion Control and Advanced Sedimentation Pilot Project, which was made possible with the support and contribution of FCM's Green Municipal Fund, and of course, all the organizations that partnered and contributed to this project. Next slide. So the purpose of this project was to assess advanced sedimentation technologies, or ASTs, which are designed to reduce the sediment and nutrient loading rates to Lake Simcoe from stormwater runoff generated by development sites. So with this in mind, we had 3 primary goals. First, to demonstrate the effectiveness of ASTs using ClearFlow products applied towards unstabilized sites. Second, to reduce erosion and discharge of sediment and associated nutrients from new development to downstream water bodies. And third, by achieving those first 2 goals, to directly contribute to a net reduction in future municipal liability when complying with Lake Simcoe Protection Plan requirements. Next slide. So just a bit of background on stormwater management in Ontario. So per the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Park guidelines, stormwater management facilities, or SWIM facilities, are effective at removing sediment that is greater than 40 micrometers in diameter. However, in areas with fine-grained soils, total suspended solids, or TSS, will be able to move right through these SWIM facilities without any removal and impact downstream watercourses. The TSS is also an efficient vector for nutrients and heavy metals. Of particular concern in our area, of course, is phosphorus, which produces negative effects downstream. So identifying methods to remove this TSS that's less than 40 micrometers in diameter is critical to being able to improve the health of downstream water bodies and achieving sustainability goals. Next slide. So our study area was the Sleeping Lion subdivision, which has 3 active stormwater management facilities. Next slide. So in the north, we have SWIM Facility 4, which represents a pre-servicing construction condition. So stormwater infrastructure is in place, but the lots have all been stripped of their topsoil. Moving south, we have temporary SWIM Facility 7, which represents an unstabilized site. So there's no permanent stormwater infrastructure in place, and the lots have all been topsoil stripped. And then off to the east, we have SWIM Facility 6, which represents a partially stabilized site. So it's mostly been constructed upstream, although there is still some areas under construction. And all 3 of these SWIM facilities ultimately discharge to Lake Simcoe. Next slide. So as part of the study, we are looking, we're studying 2 of ClearFlow's ASTs, the first of which being their gel flocculant blocks, which essentially look like large soap blocks. So this product increases sedimentation rates during regular SWIM facility operation. So it's a passive operation that happens in the storm sewers. So these blocks will react with very fine particles that are held in stormwater runoff and cause the sediment to bind together. So this allows all our finer sediment to be able to settle out in the foreways of the receiving SWIM facilities rather than passing through and impacting our downstream watercourses. Next slide. So we have a quick video here, if you could press play there. So this is the removal and then reinstallation of these gel blocks during the maintenance period. So it's a pretty simple process. They're all connected on a rope by a carabiner, so they're simple to remove. And then you can place the fresh blocks back on that rope. And then once the blocks are all attached and ready to go, they can then be lowered back into the storm sewer, at which point a tripod can be set up and someone with confined space entry training can then relay the blocks out along our storm sewer. Right, next slide. So the second ClearFlow AST that was being studied was a treated geojute. So this is used for facilities where flow is conveyed via overland channel, which for us was our SWIM Facility 7. So this jute functions as an erosion control blanket and is biodegradable within 2 to 5 years. So what makes this GeoJute superior to just a regular jute is the Lynx Ultrabind technology, which is infused into the woven material, which helps bind this treated GeoJute to the underlying soil, giving it superior erosion control. And then it can also be used in conjunction with other ASTs like the gel flocculant blocks or something similar or something simple like a rock check dam to help increase sedimentation rates. Next slide. And then we have another quick video here showing the installation. So very simple. You can just roll out this treated jute along your channel. And then once it's laid out, that's it, and it's fully functional and ready to go. All right, next slide. So these products do require periodic maintenance, the rate at which depends on the volume and velocity of water and sediment that's flowing over them. So the maintenance cycles of both of these products is approximately 3 months on average, which for our study area is 3 cycles per year, as they do not need to be installed over the winter period due to low flow or freezing over the winter months. Next slide. So in order to study the performance of these 2 ASTs, we had a sampling program that was completed over the course of a year from spring 2020 to spring 2021. So we installed continuous flow monitoring stations at each inlet and outlet of all 3 swim facilities. And then during precipitation events, water quality samples were collected at each inlet and outlet and then taken for testing. So the parameters that were studied include TSS, phosphorus, chlorides, turbidity, and a TSS particle distribution analysis, which was essentially looking at the relative amounts of each size of sediment that was flowing in and out of these swim facilities. Next slide. So from this, we're going to focus on our first major parameter that was studied, so our TSS. So this looks at our average removal over the course of our sampling period. And I'll just give a little explanation as what this chart is showing. So the first column on the left shows the results from our particle distribution analysis. So this was able to test particles that were less than 2 micrometers in diameter all the way to greater than 40. And then our second column is our removal efficiency of our regular TSS samples. So these samples were only able to test greater than 2 micrometers, all the way up to greater than 40 micrometers in diameter, which is why there is a difference between those first 2 columns. Our third column is our as designed efficiency. So this is a calculation on how these swim facilities would have performed without the ClearFlow ASTs installed. And finally, we have a theoretical calculation based on the MECP guidelines, which assumes that no particles that were less than 20 micrometers in diameter were settled in the swim facilities. So we're going to focus on our first and third columns. So we can see there was a clear improvement at our unstabilized sites. And we had an average removal efficiency of 90% at our unstabilized sites compared to an average of 60% pre-installation or 78% calculated with our as designed efficiency. Next slide. So then we just have a specific example here. So our swim facility 4 during our August 2nd event. So this is a huge event where 95 millimeters of rain fell over the course of a day. And if you look at the chart there, the first column or the first bar there is the sediment flowing into the swim facility. And the second bar there is what's flowing out. So if you look, all the orange and blue is sediment that is less than 20 micrometers in diameter. So you can see most of that sediment is being removed in our swim facility. And we had a removal efficiency of 74% during this event compared to our as designed removal efficiency of 36%. And then one thing that should be noted is that our swim facilities have been designed in accordance with MECP standards. So although you can see that there are low as designed removal efficiencies, these are actually designed per the province's standards. Next slide. So our second major parameter that was studied was phosphorus. So again, this is our average phosphorus removal over our study period. So you can see very high removals, and phosphorus removal will follow the trend of TSS reduction. So as you're able to remove more of our sediment in our swim facilities, we're then also removing phosphorus. So although not studied as part of this project, you would expect similar results for other nutrients or metals that are known to sorb to sediment. In addition, and just one thing to note, in addition to improving water quality, these ASTs also provide significant cost savings when compared to conventional site stabilization like seeding and your phosphorus offsetting costs. Next slide. Next slide. So we've shown that these ASTs are efficient at improving water quality. So we're then able to look at how they can potentially reduce municipal liability and benefit municipalities as approach to stormwater management shifts. So municipal insurance rates are rising, and through the use of these data-driven swim projects that prove that ASTs are effective at reducing risk, there is the potential for reduced premiums or potentially lower claims and fines. And the use of these ASTs and other innovative technologies will become crucial as stormwater management changes in Ontario through policy changes by the MECP, as well as updates to the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan to address specific watershed-related concerns. So you may be seeing more of a shift towards an outcome-based approach. For example, looking at swim facility discharge water quality objectives, similar to drinking water quality objectives, where conventional swim approaches would be insufficient to be able to meet these objectives. Next slide. So then just to summarize, so these ClearFlow ASTs provided clear benefit to TSS removal on unstabilized sites. Specifically, they were proven to be very effective at removing sediment that was less than 40 micrometers in diameter. Similar results were also observed for phosphorus removal. So these ASTs can assist municipalities in achieving long-term goals surrounding sediment management and site stabilization. So in addition, implementation was found to be very straightforward and efficient and easily replicable at similar unstabilized sites. So then just a final kind of benefit that came out of this study was that insights that were gained from this pilot project, from this urban construction perspective, were then helpful for ClearFlow in adjusting their formula for the application of ASTs in the mining resource industry. So a very broad application here. So then just before we move into our kind of question period, if possible, I'd like to stop sharing the presentation screen to pass off to Jerry Hanna, who has a visual demonstration of the ClearFlow AST.
And are you able to see me right now? Is anybody able to see me right now? Or do we need to change the screen? You see the bottle?
Yes, and if everybody, if you hover over Jerry's picture and then hit pin, he'll come on your full screen.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. So this is just some water from a site that's highly turbid or very, very dirty water. We put it into the glass. As you can see, it's quite turbid. As you saw in the videos, these are representative of blocks and block size, about the size of a loaf of bread. I'll just put some of this into the product, into the water itself. And actually what it's doing right now is it's just hydrating. And once it's hydrated, it becomes immediately usable. And that's really all it is to it. It's a very passive treatment. It just requires flow energy to create this reaction. So as I'm transferring this from cup to cup, it's starting the reaction in very short order, typically 10 to 45 seconds. We start getting reaction, and then we start getting the settling to happen. And it's happening right now. I can see it here. I'll show you in a second that it's going to start to settle. And the more we have this activity, the bigger and heavier the material gets. So you'll start seeing it settle right now. And that's exactly what was transpiring in your storm system. And then, as I say, we have various media there to pick up the any of the loose sediments, and your catchment systems within your infrastructure will capture that as well. So very simply put, as this is taking the material out, it's taking and reducing phosphorus loads, it's reducing other associated particles, and we're dealing at the nanoparticle level, which none of the storm systems are designed to do, as we were just proven by this study. So thank you very much, Madam Mayor and Council, for allowing us to present this evening, and we're really pleased to be able to show and these real results from your sites. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry and Kirsten, and welcome to Mr. Hartman. And I'll go to Council for questions, comments. Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I love the numbers I'm seeing. I love the phosphorus reduction. That's a big sell right now. The question I do have is, with any sort of reaction, chemical or otherwise, there's always something given, something taken. Nothing is 100% take. So in this situation, is there any residue that is being measured as it goes into the lake from the system? What we see, what we're pulling out. What I'm asking, is there anything from the chemical reaction or the reaction thereof that flows into Lake Ontario that's added from that point forward?
No, all of the the mechanisms of the block uses ion exchange. It's all standard NSF 1661 drinking water chemistry that's just put in a new patented formulation that we've put together. Our head office is in Canada. I invented this in Canada. We've now moved it to the US, and we're doing work in all over the world right now, in England and Brazil, etc. And that's a very common question. Is there a residual? No. As a matter of fact, with how much I have in there in concentration, if I put my fingers in it right now like this, there's no residual whatsoever. It's designed to attack the particles. When I did the technology, I designed it around particle attachment, not water treatment. So it's not like soap on a rope, which would just release a film. It's based on the charge of the particles, and it releases as required. So that's why the longevity of the blocks, Kirsten had mentioned three months. We can go 3 to 5 months, anywhere from 2 to 5 months is the range, depending on how much of the solid load is in the water, because the more solid load, the more it's going to release into the particles. But we've done studies with the federal government allowing us to do studies right at their fish hatcheries, which we did for a 6-month study with 2 major universities, one being the University of Guelph, to prove that it's totally 100% environmentally safe and friendly for fish and mammals. So there's no issue whatsoever with downstream effects from this. And it's proven, and it's in scientific journals, and all the data is fully available.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hanna. Other questions or comments? Councillor Waters.
Thank you. Again, impressed with some of the numbers that we're seeing there. A question in and around salt. We see we have total suspended solids and phosphorus. We have some good numbers, but I didn't see any numbers relating to salt. And so I just wanted to know how effective was this technology around reducing salt going into the stormwater management ponds and eventually into the lake?
Okay. So it's a very unique property of the chemistry that we've designed. Again, this is based on organic chemistry. It is not salt sensitive. So in other words, we can run in this waters. A lot of our industrial oil and gas or mining can have salts up to 100,000, 200,000 parts per million or milligrams per liter, and it has no effect on it. Whereas our competitive chemicals, our competitors, it would actually break down their material. So because we're not salt sensitive, which is a huge bonus, very unique to our formulations, it also doesn't take out salt. Now, it will pull out the particles which may have absorbed salt. So you could see a slight reduction based on the particle removal, but to go after salt directly, it would not take out the salts.
Thank you.
Just as a follow-up to Jerry's answer, I would say the results that we showed reflect what Jerry had said, that there was some slight removal in some storm events, and then other events we didn't see any removal. So it wasn't effective at removing salt.
If I could just ask an additional question on that, since this is based on the charge of the particles, is it possible to alternate the material to be able to remove salt if it's based on the charge of the particles? I'm just kind of curious.
No, and if I had that answer, I would have retired many years ago. Right now, there is no technology in the world that will actually remove salts. You can remove the interference around them, such as you can use thermodynamics to basically what they call distillation, where you dry out and evaporate the water, you have salt remaining, or you can use membrane filtration, such as reverse osmosis, where you can take out the salts through filtration. Our technology is used in advance of those processes to take out the solids which cause interference to those projects so that they can actually optimize and just focus on the salt. That's a benefit of our being able to operate in high salt or high salinity conditions.
Mhm.
So again, as much as it's a bonus, it's also can be a drawback trying to take out salt, but it does help salt removal.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Some of my question was answered around the salt. Thank you for your presentation. It's a very good one. I'm impressed. Just a technical question. Do you, Jude, when you roll it out, do you pin it down at all, or you just roll it out? Because I think, the wind would pick it up and blow it away or wash away. Is it, whether it's like sod or whatever, pinned down?
Yeah, we actually recommend that there's about a 15 centimeter overlap and that they are pinned. Once it's wetted and has been exposed to moisture, it will bind to the soil surface. And to be honest with you, then the pins somewhat become redundant because it is bound to that surface. That's one of the reasons why it's so efficient. One of the things, and if you noticed in the diagrams in the presentation, it was done in a swale or a ditch area. This is really good because you can actually have high flow ditches and you won't get scouring now. And that's one of the biggest problems when you're going to new construction sites. And one of the problems in urban areas, rural areas, is that culverts get plugged with sediment that's flowing out of new ditches or dirt ditches. By doing this process, you actually stop that. And you won't have that carry forward of the high solid loads. So it's hugely beneficial and much better than any erosion product that's out there. But it's because it actually binds to the soil surface and becomes basically a media for stabilizing the soil surface. It's part of a project I teach at the university.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Thank you. Councillor Nicol?
Thank you, Worship. I know we're just receiving this and staff are going to review the findings, and it's very interesting information for sure. I'm kind of curious about the gel flocculant blocks. I read there, obviously, it was explained that they deteriorate about every 3 months and need to be replaced every 3 to 4 cycles a year. I'm guessing that these are proprietary and not readily available otherwise. So I'm curious about the cost or the budget for that, whether something like this would be a DC recoverable venture, as they obviously likely benefit the development as it's going initially. But afterwards, if the town was to continue on with this system in our stormwater ponds and storm sewers, that'd be a cost that we would have yearly to replace every 3 to 4 times a year. Just
So through to the councillor, maybe I can answer that question, Jerry and Kirsten.
No, that's great.
Yeah. So we actually had done a cost or a benefit cost analysis, simply looking at the removal of phosphorus and the charge that the Conservation Authority now places on new development for phosphorus that can't be removed as part of the normal stormwater management measures. And then also looking at stabilization of the site using seeding for intermittent periods. And we showed that there was a cost benefit ratio looking at a period of, and Kirsten, correct me here, I think it was 50 years. Is that correct? We looked at?
Yes.
50 years, and we have a cost or a benefit cost ratio of 1.41. Kirsten had the slide up earlier. So it is definitely an advantage to both the developer and to the municipality from a cost perspective to implement such a technique in stormwater management systems, particularly when we're looking at the impacts of the construction phase as it relates to sediment loading of downstream watercourses.
Thank you. Anything else, Councillor Nicol? No? Councillor Waters.
Thank you. Just some of that discussion led me to another question I have. Downstream results in terms of where the sediment all goes. So right now, stormwater management ponds are have to get all that sediment removed, let's say once every 10 years. Does that increase that need to remove that sediment over a shorter period of time, and then increasing the cost of removing that sediment?
Actually, I would suggest, Councillor, that the answer to that is a little bit twofold. Number one, the sediment load that we're capturing, as you can see, the efficiency is in the sub 20 micron particles. So over that period of time, these are particle sizes that are going to be very, very minimal. So although it's capturing something that stops a downstream effect, the buildup isn't going to be similar to that of the above 40 micron particle sizes. It's quite a bit smaller, obviously. So the change in timelines is probably not going to be that much different. But secondarily, what we haven't shown here, which is something else that we have, is we have another granular product here that we actually can bind, and we did this for the city of Waterloo, where we can bind the sediment collectively, very simply, just by mixing it into the sediment after you dewater the pond. And you can take that sediment out at a cost savings to the city. So we've covered both parts, but this project was just done on the water treatment, but we can show you, or you can talk to Jessica Kellerman at the City of Waterloo as well, because they were very pleased with the results on that.
Thank you very much.
Used.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I would tell you that, first of all, I was very annoyed by the speed by which the vehicles were traveling past your crew that were putting those blocks in the storm sewer. But other than that, Councillor Waters stole my question about the chloride. You know, we know that Lake Simcoe and the Conservation Authority is concerned about the levels, or the increasing levels and the trend in Lake Simcoe, and because it is so soluble, it is very difficult to remove. However, you know, we all know that we can, Mr. Hanna, maybe your next invention can be something that we can use instead of salt on our roads and our parking lots. And but you know, while the Conservation Authority is very concerned about that, our residents are concerned about suspended solids downstream, and so anything we can do to help with that is definitely a bonus. So I really appreciate your efforts, and a big thank you to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities as well, and their Green Fund for allowing this to happen. And I want to thank you all for being here this evening.
Madam Mayor, would it be possible just to make one more comment towards your issue on the salts?
Sure.
Sure. So one thing is, we have the ability through that same material we talked about binding the sediments, to actually stabilize the soil surface in the construction area. A lot of those materials that are being driven down off the roads, other than your road salting in the wintertime, which can carry that down, but a lot of those materials are also on your soil surface structure. So as that washes into your storm ponds, it carries a lot of those salts with it. So one of the things that we talk about typically when we work with our municipalities is, let's look at areas that we can stabilize the soil surface as well as a preemptive measure to stop that migration of those materials and reduce all influences such as hydrocarbons and whatever else might be on there, because this will take out light hydrocarbons like the VOCs or you know, organic carbon-based materials. It will pull those out as well. But the other thing that it does is also reduces algae. And the phosphorus, not only the food for the algae, but it's also, if there's algae there existing, it'll also start to drop that out that's in the water. So now your water quality, or your plant life, is much healthier plant life, and you know, you're going to have less off-gassing and less smell and things like that from your water. So a lot of the contributory factors or unique benefits of this product gives your environment a much more advantageous look, but also it's we have to look at what's proactive and preemptive to this. It's a holistic treatment, not just treating at the end source. We want to, how do we stabilize stockpiles? How do we stabilize soil surfaces in new construction? The more we mitigate that, the less we have to fill up our storm ponds with solids that don't need to be there. So just a comment as an additive. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Thanks for the great presentation. Very promising. So with that, I'll thank our guests and ask that Councillor Orsatti and Waters move and second the recommendation that the presentation be received, and also the report that is attached as well that had some possible go forward actions through our development engineering team. So all in favor of the recommendation? Those opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much again for being here. Next is item 7, which is announcements from any of the meetings that you've been to on behalf of council. I'm going to start with Councillor Donna Orsatti, who was the alternate councillor at County Council this week.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, for County Council, just letting everyone know that the 2022 tax rates and ratios for Simcoe County were approved. Property taxes for 2022 will rely on the January 2016 values, and that means there is no changes to the current policy for tax ratios. There is no change to the current policy for farmland awaiting development or commercial and industrial vacant and excess land. There is, the province has changed the agri-food subclass, and that is changing the small scale on-farm business subclass threshold from 50 to 100,000. And then the second announcement of interest to some people may be with the Lake Simcoe Region Airport. And there was a approval of a draft registered plan of subdivision. That's not homes, but to allow long-term leasing opportunities on the current land. And that's in specific blocks on the airport land. And this will allow tenants and developers to engage in leases that exceed 21 years. And there's no alterations to the existing site or buildings. And I also have an announcement on behalf of Innisfil Libraries, if I may do that at this time, Your Worship. Thank you. So just, the library is very excited. They have a number of new partnerships to showcase starting in April. The first is partnering with Tangier Outlet Mall. They're offering Toddler Tales. It's a family story time at the mall on the first Tuesday of every month. And registration is at the Tangier Guest Services. And the first event is starting on April the 5th. Also, their Innisfil Libraries are bringing some important workshops to the community in partnership with Matthews House Hospice. And this is for the community to learn about coping with grief and loss and mindfulness. And the last one is that finally, on the heels of the successful Ice Hut project, Innisfil Libraries are partnering with PRNT and that collective, and that's to bring printmaking workshop to Innisfil. And for any residents who want to find out more about this, they can go on the Innisfil Libraries website at innisfilideallab.ca. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. In-Services held their board meeting last week on I believe it was the 16th. And the board approved In-Services enter into a fees agreement with Stroud Developers to cover the In-Services cost, to determine and confirm the cost to extend both water and sewer into Innisfil. or into Stroud, I'm sorry. Also, we talked about the school board approaches to extend the water main to Killarney Beach School. The study will be paid by In-Service as well as the installation, or by Simcoe County School Board. And this would likely happen in 2023 if it's approved, and I think it probably will be. Also, the Alcona Zone 3 Booster Station EA and preliminary design was awarded to Ainley and Associates, so that future anticipation development will be met. It will be wholly funded by DC charges. Of the future development, of course, that's coming. It was over budget somewhat, but I'm going to go ahead with it anyway. There was talk about zebra mussel cleaning again. I think that's been resolved. We have a contractor that is going to continue cleaning the intake pipe into the water plant this spring. There were many lengthy reports from the province. They did their inspections on our many different water stations, Stroud, our main station, just all of everything that we have. And the reports were all good. All the water is safe to drink. I mean, they made recommendations such as valve maintenance programs, et cetera, but overall, our drinking water passed with flying colors. So people are safe to drink the water, and which is probably one of the most important things. Each report was many pages long, and there were many of them. So basically, that's the gist of the board meeting. There were many other things, but they were in camera, so they will come out sooner or later. But those are the things that I can discuss with you right now.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Yeah, we did, those inspection reports were very good, and they are all available on the In-Services website. And the In-Services website got a new flashy makeover, and it's really quite nice. If you haven't had, I would encourage everybody to have a quick look at that.
So do I.
Thank you so much. Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Your Worship. This past week, we had our first meeting of the pitching committee, and with the relaxing of regulations to Innisfil and residents, we are looking at going back to the old scheme with the pitch-in day. We are very happy to announce that we are working in partnership with the Innisfil Fire Department, using the stations again as the pickup locations. We're looking to get together the kits like we did last year to minimize contact as much as possible, but if all goes according to plan, we will have a very normal-ish pitch-in day this year, where people can go to the stations, pick up, and then after that at Centennial Park potentially have a barbecue after, where we are looking to work hand in hand with the Innisfil Library to see what we can do to get the children involved and invested in the beautification of our town. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else have any announcements from committees? Seeing none, I'll go to the EOC for an update.
Thank you, Your Through you to Council, the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit will be decreasing the frequency of their COVID-19 reporting, but they cautioned us about possible emergence of new variants or waves in the future. The province has lifted most masking requirements under the Reopening Ontario Act effective March 21st. Dr. Gardner released a letter of guidance to businesses and organizations dated March 18th, wherein he continues to strongly advise individuals to wear masks indoors, given the ongoing levels of transmission in our community. EOC decided to continue masking requirements for town staff for at least 2 weeks up until April 4th to allow time to reassess and revise if warranted. The town's emergency declaration will also remain in place until at least April 4th. Residents attending town facilities will be asked to passively screen prior to entry, and masking is still encouraged. At this time, Innisfil Transit passengers and visitors to the Rosardo Health and Wellness Center must continue to wear masks and face coverings in accordance with OREG 36420. Please continue to watch for further updates. Dr. Gardner also released a special statement to the public today, reminding us that although public safety measures have been lifted, we must remember that learning to live with COVID-19 does not mean that it is gone or that the pandemic is over. Dr. Gardner strongly urged the continued use of masks, physical distancing, maintenance of HVAC systems, and washing to protect yourselves, those around you, and those that you love. He also asks that we all be patient, kind, and compassionate towards others, respecting their choice whether or not they continue to wear a mask in public. Finally, Dr. Gardner encourages everyone who can get vaccinated against COVID-19, which you can do this Sunday, March 27th, when the GoVax bus returns to Innisfil. The bus will be located at the Stroud Community Center parking lot from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. this Sunday, and you can book online or simply walk in. Thank you.
Thank you for that update, Jen. Much appreciated. I just have one update, and that was from earlier today. The South Simcoe Police Services Board met, and we did get a presentation from the Crisis Outreach and Support Team, also known as COAST. So this is a team that we put together in 2017, where it's a plainclothes police person and a plain car and a crisis outreach worker in that vehicle that can respond and follow up with people with mental health issues and offer different supports for them. It's been going very, very well. However, it is only from Monday to Friday because that is all that the funding will allow. So they did receive a $20,000 grant from the Innisfil Community Foundation, which allows them to now have an extra shift on the weekend, an extra 8-hour shift. So it was really wonderful to sit there and see real firsthand how these dollars are getting back into a community and making tangible differences in our community. Also, the board has approved a pilot project for body-worn cameras. So there will be, at no cost to us, the company that sells the cameras is fitting up 16 of our officers with body-worn cameras. And we'll get surveys going out amongst our residents to see how they feel about them. And then the board will make a further decision at a later date. So that's all the announcements for tonight, or updates for tonight from different committees. I'm seeing no more hands, so we'll move then into item 8, which is our consent list. So we will move through all of the reports and minutes that are on this list. If people want to ask a question, they can, or if they want to defer to committee of the whole to have more robust debate, we can do that as well. If the item you're interested in is not pulled, it will be confirmed at the end of the meeting once we rise back into council. So we'll start with A1, that's the special council minutes dated March the 9th. A2, the council meeting minutes for March the 9th. B1, that's the Innisfil Heritage Advisory Committee Summary Report. B2, the Innisfil Accessibility Advisory Committee Meeting Report. B3, the Pitching Committee Meeting Report. And then staff reports. C1, the Electronic Permitting Pilot Project Cloud Permit. Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't think I want to pull it, but I do want to just make a comment that I'm glad to see this coming on. It is a pilot project. It is nothing written in stone yet, but hopefully it will improve the permit system over time. That where maybe they look at different permits for different jobs such as decks and determine the difference for an addition and a full house. And I'm looking forward to seeing a report once this pilot is done.
Thank you. Councillor Fowler.
Thank you, Worship. I just have one question regarding the report. On the bottom of page 4, under local impact. It says in summer 2020, the staff tracked the quality of permit applications that were being received. It was determined that roughly 2/3 of permit applications were incomplete on the first submission, many for missing items that would have been caught automatically through an e-permitting platform such as Cloud Permit. This results in much frustration from applicants who are trying to do the right thing by obtaining a permit and additional work for staff. Once this goes through, is there going to be a cost offset like with the hours that are being done to maintain this as it is without the cloud permit system? What's the comparable dollar per dollar? Because if the staff is putting in time and energy and it can get the system to put the permits in faster, is it even remotely zeroing out, or is it something that we're paying a little extra for that will expedite the process and help the residents better?
Mr. Vickers?
Through you, Your Worship, it's expected that there would be, if it would be much more efficient, because what's happening is we accept the application electronically, and then when a staff person gets to look at it, they'll say, oh, you haven't completed, the ownership box of the property or some other thing like this. And then we have to go back to the applicant and say, could you fill this in? And so it's a waste of staff time and it's a waste of the applicant's time. So if electronically, they're just filling out a form, and when you fill out these forms, it says, okay, you can go to the next page. And then you try to go to the next page, it goes, oh, wait a minute. You don't have your phone number, you don't have the area code or something. And then, so this just automatically happens in this the software does what staff currently spends really an unnecessary amount of time doing. So there will be an efficiency.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Councillor Waters?
I just want to say I can't wait for this to get implemented, because McDougall Township up near Perry Sound already uses a cloud-based system, and I'm familiar with it because I had to actually put a permit in, and Mr. Vickers is absolutely correct. If you don't do something right, it tells you right then and there that you haven't done it right. And then you also have messaging capabilities to and from the person who's reviewing your site. You can see all your files that you've uploaded. You can change them at any time. You can update them. So I think this is going to be a really beneficial for the town to have. I think will reduce staff time and it'll allow them to move more applications through the process, as opposed to following up on existing ones. So I can't wait for this to happen. Congratulations.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van Berkel?
Thank you, Your Worship, and I agree with that. That's why I said, I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it too, because I get calls all the time from people that are filling out a permit right now, and there's questions on there. They want to put an addition on their house, and it says, what's the difference in elevation between your main floor and the crown of the road, in the middle of the road? All they need to do is say yes on it or something, but they're stuck. So I'm looking forward to it. I really am. And I do congratulate you going to cloud and hopefully, and I know it will make the permit system a lot easier.
Thank you, Councillor. I have one question, if I could, Mr. Vickers. Is there training? Is there a training allowance, or is there training impacted? Do we have to train staff up on this system?
Yeah. So through Your Worship, the staff already has a pretty good idea of what they're doing, and so this is just, there will be software. Yeah, this is going to be, we're going to be running parallel to systems for a little bit till we do the transition. So it's going to be an additional workload anytime any of us brings on new software. There's a period, there's a transition period that's going to be somewhat less than ideal, but the training's included in the package.
Great, thank you so much. Any other questions or comments? So we didn't pull that. Oh, sorry, Councillor Sadi.
Yes, I just wanted to echo the other councillors. I think that this is going to streamline the system and the experience for residents. And I think, I foresee a win-win from both the staff perspective of timing and, going back and forth. So I too look forward to, this, some update after, 1 year pilot. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands, we'll move on to C2, the funding request for Community Development Standards Branch for fleet additions. C4, the housekeeping bylaw amendments. Councillor Eithes?
I'd like to refer that to committee, please.
Thank you. Item C5, the zoning bylaw amendment application for 2044 25th Side Road. Go ahead, Councillor Orsatti.
I'm sorry, Your Worship. Did you skip by C3?
Did I?
Flexible work
Yes, she
arrangements?
did.
Oh, I did. I am assuming somebody wants to pull that one? Refer it
Yes.
to committee?
I just have some questions, but I think other staff might as well.
Okay, let's refer it and then we can have some discussion there. Sorry about that, everyone. So we were on C5. That was 2044 25th Side Road. C6, the Ennis Village subdivision demonstration unit. And we'll go to staff reports for information. D1, the first quarter of the economic development update. I don't want to pull it. I just want to give a big shout out. It's awesome. I love the red carpet standard. I think that's for investment. I think that's just the perfect attitude and one that we'll need in our community going forward. And wow, like we're not even done Q1 yet. We got our Q1 report, so that's pretty quick. Councillor Waters.
Just a quick question, if you wouldn't mind. I was just wondering, I didn't see downtown Alcona as an economic development site, and I just was kind of curious, do they consider the development, the commercial development along downtown Alcona a part of that economic development or not?
I see that Yelmer is with us. Yelmer, did you have a comment on that?
Through your worship, Councillor Waters, yes, it certainly is an area of focus and it will further be elaborated in the economic development update strategy that we're working on. So we'll refer to it in that document.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Orsatti. You're on mute, Councillor.
Sorry, I think it's council trying to muzzle me already. I just wanted to say this is a great report, and I really like the one of the as well the new streamlined process. But I like the new program focused on supporting established Innisfil businesses and helping them to expand their business. And I think that that's necessary, and especially at this time. All that we can do. So I really look forward to the updates on this as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Great work, Yelmer. Next is D3, the statement. Oh, sorry, did again. D2, the municipal election 2022 general information. I just encourage anybody who's watching who might be considering getting involved in local government to read this report, and there's lots of great suggestions and great ways you can reach out to members of staff in the clerk's office who will be happy to answer any of your questions. And I'm sure I can speak for all of council that any of us are also available if you have questions about, what kind of time commitment it is or getting anyone's perspective. You've got some time to think about it from May. You've got up until the middle of August till the rubber hits the road. But encourage anyone who's interested to look into getting involved in local government. Item D3 is a staff report about the council remuneration expenses for the year of 2021. And there's under E, there's no bylaws, there's no correspondence for action and correspondence of information. There's 3 items. Any of those 3 items, there's a proclamation for It Starts, which you see I'm promoting on my background today. There's a proclamation for World Autism Awareness Day, which is April the 2nd, and the County Council meeting highlights for March the 8th. Seeing none, then we'll go to the consent list recommendation, and we have the 2 items on there, and I will ask Councillor Fowler and Councillor Payne to move and second that recommendation. All those in favor? That's carried. Now we'll have a motion to resolve into committee as a whole so that we can have some more fulsome debate. And I'll ask Councillor Nicol and Councillor Eisses to move and second that recommendation. All in favor? That is carried. So our first item was item C3, and Councillor Orsatti, do you have a seconder?
No, I don't. I'm not looking to change anything. So Councillor Rumnick, thank you. I just felt that this deserves some discussion without it sliding by. And I think that the pandemic has allowed businesses to trial new working models from home. And seeing this hybrid as a new form for businesses, throughout municipalities. But a couple things that in reading the report, I was really happy to see the WSIB, the legal concerns, also addressing the legal concerns with the 6-month and 1-year agreements with review. And also just for any residents watching, wondering about this, that the personal expenses for staff to set up their own home workplace. And I just wanted to, and I want to share that, in the last, always, I've had great support from IT, but I think during the pandemic, when you're struggling with equipment and you're not seeing people, excellent service from that department, immediate service and right away, which is a great example of the, working from home. And I just wondered a couple things. One, and so I just wanted to double check with some staff on a couple questions is, and I guess this would go to our director of our people and talent, is that previously in my first term of office, I would have developers or residents that had an issue, they had a concern, we'd gather staff, we'd meet in the boardroom, and we could address those concerns and proactively come up with some solutions or resolutions to satisfaction. And I just wonder, how do you see that being handled with the new hybrid? That is one of my questions. And then I have a couple more. So I don't know if you want to just answer them one at a time. Thank you very much. And thank you for coming in on your vacation day here tonight. I appreciate that, Francesca.
Thank you, Councillor Orsatti. I'll go to Director Figliuzzi, please.
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Orsatti. That is an excellent question. And I think we have been able to demonstrate that throughout the pandemic. We have had a tremendous number of staff that have remained at the work site and in the field, including our operations and our fire staff. More resident facing, we've also had our customer service teams, our CDSB and bylaw teams and inspection teams. So to answer your questions most specifically is absolutely, we will always ensure that we have staff available to meet with developers, for example, or other third parties in person. And that could take absolutely 2 forms. If it is an individual who walks into the town hall and wants to have that conversation, we would absolutely go to one of our meeting rooms and start that conversation. If a staff member who is working remotely on that specific day, what we would do is we would take advantage of the fantastic video conferencing tools that IT has put in place and patch that individual in to be part of that conversation. So hybrid meetings are absolutely a way of the future as well. The second option, if they wanted all individuals to be on site, it would simply be a matter of scheduling an appointment. Our hybrid work agreements do provide latitude that they could be rearranged if there was a business need that required them on site at a town facility outside of their regular schedule. We would work with them to arrange that date to meet the developer or the third party's needs to meet in person.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Francesca. Another question, Councillor Arsati?
Yes, and just a couple things from my perspective and also with residents and I think you've touched base on this is, the importance of on-site staff, which has always been the customer service, the bylaw officers and some assistants from the building department because people do have questions and they may not have technology and they really need those questions answered. And, from a customer service perspective as well, I think ongoing staff meetings, which I think is identified in the report that would address any concerns and assist to help build teams, because when you work from home, we sometimes fragment that people connection. And you can tell that I'm an extroverted people person. So that's important. And I think also from the town perspective, another thing I see is really important for our community is we really need a strong communication strategy and support for the community to push out those messages, of the change and how they can, how to reach a department, the online portals and what services are there for them so that they're not struggling. And because change is sometimes a difficult. And then my last question is just, is in the report, it speaks about staff having an opportunity to look at long-term needs and planning for the town hall, and also an opportunity with that comes potential revenue generation and lease agreements. And I wonder, will staff be coming back to council with those discussions and also possibly an update on how well this new hybrid continuation is working? Thank you.
Thank you, Francesca.
Want me to go to CAO Gershow?
Thank you, Your Worship. Francesca can certainly help answer this question. I think there's a couple of parts there. I mean, from a space planning perspective, that's a very active bit of analysis that's underway right now. Because if you go back to before the pandemic started, we have had some changes in staffing since that time. We've also had some changes in the use of space within Town Hall, for example, over the past few years. So trying to match up our, as of today, supply of space and demand for space is something that we're reconciling right now. So I think on the point about leasing, there's no sort of decision buried in this report. I think all it's saying is that once we've done that side-by-side analysis, if it's identified that we're going to need additional space, we'll look at the options for how to address that. And it's also one of those topics that should be discussed across the OTOT partner organizations too, because they're in a similar situation. And in terms of a future report back, I think that's absolutely something we can do. I think we're all going to be curious to see how hybrid work works and what adjustments might need to be made. So yes, we can report back in the future.
Thank you. More questions, Councillor Arsati? No? Okay, I'll go to Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wonder, because I've been in business and always had an office at home, so everything came from home. Will this be any implication? People that work at home 3 or 4 days a week, can they claim part of their house as an office as a tax write-off? Or because now they're no longer going into an office, I'm just wondering, is there an implication there that, maybe that you can do that?
Francesca, can you answer that?
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, I will certainly start the response and invite Treasurer Webb as needed. So while employees are responsible for all accountabilities and costs relating to a home office, the Canada Revenue Agency does provide the latitude or the option for individuals to claim certain costs regarding a home office through their end of year reporting. As staff are not required to work from home, it is more of an optional, I would like to work from home part of the time. They would then make that request through the town, and we would support them with the information or the paperwork that they would need.
Thank you. Anything to add, Treasurer Webb? Okay, Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. What about workman compensation? If they fall at home, are they covered?
Francesca?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Yes, absolutely. So it depends type of response to your question. If an accident happens as a direct result of providing work and completing your work, so maybe a slip, trip, and fall off a desk chair, that would be deemed the workplace. So WSIB would come into effect. However, if it was a situation where a member was working from home, they were in the kitchen and fell in that situation, there is no direct correlation between being physically at work and doing work versus being in one's home. So WSIB would not be a consideration in that situation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Waters.
Just a comment. I think it's very progressive that we adopt the hybrid model because many employers are now choosing where they're going to work in terms of who their employer is based on whether or not they can work at home. So it would be a shame to lose a lot of talented people because we didn't offer that. So just a pat in the back to staff and council for adopting that model and allowing staff this flexibility. People find they're just as productive at home or even more productive at home than they are in the office because there's less distractions. So anyways, just a positive comment on that.
Thank you for that, Councillor Waters. And I'll say we are way ahead of our time because we first passed our first flexible work arrangements way back in 2017. So long before the COVID. So and I think you're right. I think offering that type of flexibility really helps attract good talent. And we need good talent because we are a customer-centric organization, and we need the best of the best. Other questions or comments? Councillor Ices?
Thank you, Worship. I do agree with the premise of the report that it's a good step to give our employees better working conditions. I was just curious whether there had been any analysis done on the costs of this hybrid system. We were kind of forced into having our employees work from home. So there was cost to have them at home, whether it was IT or office supplies. And then, likely we had some savings, utility savings, as some of the buildings were not being used as they would have been normally. Do we have an idea what this would do to our budget on these items?
Director Figliuzzi, do you have an answer to that?
Absolutely. Through your worship to Councillor Ices. Over the past 2 years, there really have been minimal financial impacts to working remotely at the outset of the pandemic. Most of the costs have absolutely been covered through each service area's operating budgets, with some small overhead as it related to IT. So we've seen huge progression with the video conferencing software, VPN, transitioning a few staff who didn't have laptops to providing them a laptop for ease of work, as well as also some transition in developing and implementing electronic as well as digital platforms and processes for for the residents, including the web portal, Resident. So in essence, while we may have had some limited costs, we actually are further ahead now than we would have been. A number of these initiatives were in the thought process prior to the start of the pandemic, and the pandemic just kind of gave us that speed up to implement and accelerate some of these plans. So certainly no significant costs have been incurred, mostly operating costs within each service area budget.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this item? Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one question about flexibility, work flexibility. Does this change anything with council meetings? Do we stay virtual or do we go back to council?
Director Francesca, or do you want CAO Gershow to answer that one?
Through you, Your Worship, I'm happy to start the response and welcome CAO to join in as required. So at this time, no formal decisions have been made regarding the transition of council meetings to either an in-person or a hybrid model. We are actively looking at process and feasibility on the back end, primarily led by our IT team and our clerk services team. However, we are hopeful to have some type of alignment as relates to the reintegration into the workplace. However, the logistics and the feasibility of that timeline is still to be seen.
Okay, thank you.
I know that a lot of, if I could just add to that, I know many of our colleagues have gone back to in-person meetings. We are working with IT, so I'm going to put it out there that probably around May-ish, we should be back in person, but a lot of that will depend on how we can get IT set up properly so that we can enjoy the same amount of live streaming that we do now in this setting, if that makes any sense. Seeing no more questions or comments, I'll call the vote on this item. All in favor? Those opposed? So that's carried unanimously. And we'll go to the housekeeping bylaw, item C4. And that was referred by Councillor Eisses. The floor is yours, Councillor. Do you have a seconder?
I will ask Councillor Van Berkel to be my seconder. Yes, thank you for that. I pulled this just, I had a couple questions on point 3 with the site alteration bylaw, and then a small question about point 4, the fence bylaw. I looked back with the site alteration bylaw to the last report that staff brought forward in February 2020, where they were they asked permission to review that bylaw, to update it, and there was a bunch of gaps that were pointed out in the old bylaw, and so they're coming forward. The staff's coming forward with this bylaw amendment to just deal with one of those gaps, and that's being the permission to enter property to access information. I'm just wondering, in the report it said that the full bylaw will come back probably in July, and I'm just wondering for maybe a bit of an explanation of the urgency of this part coming forward at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Harris.
Through your worship to Councillor Eisses, thank you. Yeah, so the urgency with adding this section is to allow our officers the correct right of entry requirements to investigate complaints. So with some new provincial changes to the excess soil regulations, we anticipate an increase in calls and concerns about imported fill, somewhat due to our proximity to the 400 in the GTA. So while the site alteration bylaw is going through a more fulsome review, this will give staff the ability to enforce the bylaw currently as it is, as we receive complaints.
If I may, I wonder if you can maybe expand on the changes that the province just put out. I'm somewhat familiar with them, but I think it helps put this in the context a little bit more.
Mr. Harris?
Yes, I might defer that question to the engineering department.
Thank you. Who do we have from engineering who could answer that question? We've got Ms. Verbosch and Mr. McKenzie. So who wants to go first?
I can probably speak to it a little bit just because I've been part of the policy group looking at the changes that are impacting the town as a result of the amendments to the excess soils regs, Councillor Ices. We have a policy group led by Daryl Fuller of our capital engineering group, as well as Jenna from In Services. And we've been working with an external counsel to make sure that our contracts deal with all of the changes appropriately. So there's quite a number of changes that have been introduced already in the regulation. Most of the implemented changes deal with the registration of receiving sites. And then I'm not sure if Councillor Ices, you're aware, but they've pushed off the implementation of the January 1st, 2023 changes, or they're asking for consultation on pushing those off to I think a further year yet. So there's a whole bunch of different changes that are going to be implemented, but I think the way that I understand it the best is that the province is essentially making it really difficult to dispose of soil at landfills, and so they're trying to find ways to reuse soils. But in doing so, the town is going to ultimately be responsible for knowing where soils come from and where they're going. So there's a whole element of tracking. It's pretty detailed, and I anticipate that when we come back to you with the changes to the site alteration bylaw, there will likely be something in that report as well, detailing the changes to the excess soils regulations and the impacts to the town. And with that, I'll leave it to Mr. McKenzie if he wants to add anything.
Thank you, Mr. McKenzie.
To your worship, Louise covered it all. I'm not part of that soils group. I have attended a few things, so I don't want to say any incorrect information at this time, but Louise is pretty up to speed. So
great.
Thanks.
Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you for that. I would say that the agriculture community does receive some of that topsoil and uses it in improving the land that we farm. So it does affect not only the town but some of the those involved in agriculture as well. My other question was about the town's fence bylaw. In Ward 1, there was a couple of issues recently about fences in between commercially zoned areas and residential areas. And I just wanted to make sure that this change didn't affect that and that the town still was going to enforce those bylaws between those areas.
Mr. Harris?
Through your worship, Councillor Ices, that is correct, Councillor Ices. There's no change to the fence bylaw or the building maintenance bylaw in relation to conditions of fences. This is just removing the Line Fences Act section from our fence bylaw, which the town did opt out of in 2019. So this is just a way to clean up that section of the bylaw, but all the other regulations do remain.
Thank you. That was all the questions I had.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van Berkel?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a little bit of a problem with, I have no problem with, if in the middle of a field they're dumping soil that, you go in and do that without asking. But I think that is pretty broad that, where they have rights to access properties. It doesn't say, that it's only where they're dumping excessive fill. they could use this bylaw basically to go anywhere, onto a lot, whether it's on a lake or somewhere else. And, somebody be sitting there drinking their coffee in the morning and 5 people descend on their property without asking because somebody complained. I think that needs to be defined a little bit better, because that's like, a drug rate in my mind. We're going to come there and do this. So I have a problem with that. I think, if it's in a residential lot or a residential area, that people should be warned if building department or engineers or anybody else want to come, because if there's something wrong there, they're going to have to fix it. I don't have a problem with that, but I think people should be notified. MPAC comes onto your property to let you know that you're coming, and I think that should be the way it is with this bylaw as well. Like I said, I understand if there's loads and loads of fill being dumped in a field somewhere, of course you go in and check it out. But it should say that.
I'm going to go to Mr. Harris or perhaps Ms. Verbosch, if she has a comment. Go ahead, Mr. Harris.
Thank you. Through your worship, to Councillor Van Berkel. Yeah, so this right of entry section that we're proposing is just for the site alteration bylaw. So it would just be in relation to fill complaints. Officers are sensitive of private property and the residents' rights to private property. So in any event, we always try and make contact first with the property owner. With site alteration, it becomes a little challenging because sometimes we're dealing with large areas of land, maybe vacant properties. So these rights would just be for the site alteration bylaw, this amendment.
As long as it's just for that, because, the way I read it is like going to court without a lawyer. I mean, you can't defend yourself because you're not there. And nobody notified you to say, I'm coming. So as long as it is for site alterations and not because somebody complained, that their swale is filled or whatever on a private lot, then I think if you're going to go onto those properties, people should be notified.
Thank you, Councillor. I, from the person who probably sends in the most fill complaints of anyone, it's been very frustrating over the years, particularly. I mean, we've tightened it up quite a bit now, but it wasn't that many years ago that people were buying lots or farms and putting in, $1 million worth of fill and then building a house on top of the fill. So it has been an issue. We've had entire valleys filled in. We've had a number of properties that have been ruined by bad fill. So having the ability to access those properties, I think is important. But I agree with Louise. I find this new excess soils regulation a little foreboding, and I'm quite concerned. So we'll see where we go with that. But for today, this change, if it will help these people who are transporting fill on a weekend when they think that nobody's watching them, that's good for me.
Just a comment, Your Worship. You know what? And I agree with you. I agree totally with you. But I can also see, like on the shore, all these $1 million mansions. They're all owned by lawyers and doctors and whatever else. I can see walking onto their property and winding up in court, or being a real headache for all of us. So, if you're going to go to one of these places because you think there's something wrong, why not, put a notice on their door or send them an email saying we're coming tomorrow morning?
Yeah, and I think that's what Mr. Harris said, is that is what our team does, and I trust that they are very cognizant of private property rights and proper notice.
Yeah, because after all, we do own them. We pay taxes.
Mr. Harris, anything to add?
Yeah, through your worship. Yeah, just to add, yeah, that's correct. Staff are sensitive of the residents' right to private property. So the Municipal Act does give us the rights of entry for officers, but like Councillor Van Berkel said, our first option is to reach out to the homeowner, whether it be the front door. But for site alteration, that is a bit different if we're dealing with a vacant property, but we still, after the fact, would reach out to the owner.
No, I understand that site alterations and illegally dumped fill, absolutely 100%.
Thank you. Councillor Orsatti?
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to say that I think that that clarification tonight is necessary as well for residents who read this and then suddenly start thinking, oh, bylaw or whoever have the right to enter my property at any time. It does state in here for the drainage bylaw, and I think it had in the report about the illegal dumping and that happening on a lot of private properties. But I think just that explanation that this is, applying to this and that necessary control. I think it's always good to clarify and get that message clearly out in the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments on this bylaw? I think it's high time, and I thank Mr. Harris for having for going through all of these, and because they do need to be updated. Some of them are quite old, so it's good to have this fresh eyes on them and make these housekeeping updates. All those in favor of the recommendation? Any opposed? One opposed, that's carried. Next, we'll go to the RISE recommendation, please. And I'll ask, I forgot where I am. I think I was at Councillor Van Berkel and Councillor Orsatti to move and second the RISE recommendation. All those in favor? That's carried. And next, the recommendation to adopt all of the committee of the whole recommendations. And that is moved by Councillor Waters and seconded by Councillor Fowler. All those in favor? That is carried. There are no notices of motion, and then I'll go straight to announcements. Is there any announcements from members of council? Councillor Fowler?
Thank you, Your Worship. I know it's not exactly in my ward, so I apologize to Councillor Payne for this, but at Friday Harbor this past weekend, Ice Corp worked together with Friday Harbor, the Innisfil Food Bank, and Christmas for Kids for their first polar bear plunge in a number of years. And I took the dip, and needless to say, it was something I'd do again for a good cause. So I want to thank everybody for all the support they've shown, and it was just incredible to see so many people willing to get cold to keep other people warm and fed. So this just goes to show the heart of our community, and it's something that I'm incredibly proud of. So thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll add that I heard from Mr. Rostome today from the CEO of Friday Harbor. There were 35 participants and they raised over $2,190. So it's great job.
Actually, Your Worship, it was 3,100.
Oh, my apologies. Yeah, and it was fun getting to push Hani in Lake Simcoe, and a lot of fun had by all. Other announcements, I had Councillor Nicol.
Your Worship, just a couple of points here. Monday I happened to be in Cookstown around lunchtime and happened to catch the grand opening of the One Church Bar and Grill. Marston, Alyssa and Doug reopened that location. Similar layout, but definitely a different experience, and it's a great addition for Cookstown. Unfortunately, I did see on social media that a longtime resident of Cookstown, Sarah Curry, passed away, and unfortunately I was able to make for that service. As Councillor Fowler mentioned, the polar plunge, myself and Wyatt were there, and we happily paid our way not to jump, so we were glad with that. Although Wyatt has dropped the gauntlet and said he's willing to jump next year, and so for fundraising next year, we'll maybe challenge Councillor Fowler to see who can raise the most money between myself, Wyatt, and maybe Gabe and Kenneth as well. Lastly, there likely will be some great interest in Ward 7 over the next couple of months by the looks of things, and residents of especially the Guildford area may wish to attend the planning meeting coming up on April 6th at 6:30. There's a proposed development at Cooks Bay Marina that will be of great interest to the community, I'm sure. So, and all that information is available on get involved in Innisfil.ca. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Then I had Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. From the Tent City Synagogue, I want to thank you and Chief Fletcher. They actually got $5,000 for that grant to put cameras in. So, you know, on their behalf, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. That's great news. Did anyone else have any announcements? See, Councillor Payne.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Your Worship. Not too much going on, but I just wanted to say that there's a lot of happy Sandy Covers as our buildings are starting to open, and we have our first dance on March the 26th. So everybody's getting their dancing shoes on ready, and we're going to be going. So it's going to be a fun time. It's been a long time, and there's been a lot of seniors that we've lost that have been, you know, on their own. And so it's going to be a little different because there's quite a few that we won't see dancing on the floor, and that's a shame. But everybody's getting ready to get back to life again. So that it's going to be an exciting weekend.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah, it's going to be nice.
Wonderful. Any other announcements? I had a couple. It's been a busy couple of weeks in this area. So I'll start with Friday, March the 11th, when Premier Ford came to RVH, and I was there with the President CEO, Janice Scott, and he brought with him the Deputy Premier, Christine Elliott, and the Attorney General, Doug Downey, and also MPP Kanjan. And the Premier announced the MZO, which we were very excited that Minister Clark signed our MZO for our South Campus. But on top of that, a $2.5 million grant to start the planning for the South Campus. So it was really, really welcome news. He then took the opportunity also to take a tour of Tempo Flexible Plastic in the afternoon. And that was fun because, you know, their family comes from printing background. So he was ready to start running one of the presses. He was, you know, having a great time with the employees, and he even took time to have his picture taken with Nitro, our police dog, before he left that day. And then that was the Friday. And then on the Wednesday, with my deputy warden hat, I had the opportunity to be with him again at the Honda plant in Alliston, along with Prime Minister Trudeau and Minister Champagne and Minister Fedeli, for an announcement for a $1.4 billion investment in the Honda plant. They're going to be the lead manufacturer of the new CR-V hybrid vehicles in Honda. So that means, well, it's in their neighboring municipality. It means more traffic for Cookstown, but it means also many of our residents are employed at Honda. So it's very good news. And also then Premier Ford went on to Stevenson Memorial Hospital with a grant for them as well, and moving on to the next phase of their redevelopment. And again, I know many Innisfil residents in the Southwest Quadrant do use Stevenson Memorial as their hospital. So all good news. March the 12th, I went to Barrie City Hall with Steve Lawson, our Innisfil resident, who has a COVID long hauler who wanted to support and walk for his heroes, which are the frontline workers at Royal Victoria Hospital. And so we walked on a very, very cold day from Barrie City Hall to RVH, where he was met by his ICU team that looked after him for so many months. And it was very heartwarming and touching. And I was joined by Mayor Lehman and MPP Kanjan and Councillor Harris, and also Mayor Sandy McDonald from ESSA, because Steve's father is an ESSA resident. So that was a lovely day. Then that's about it. The only other thing is the resident that Councillor Nicol was talking about, Sarah, also known as Sarita Curry. I did attend her funeral, and it was very, very well attended, very well respected, longtime resident. So that's it for my announcements. Councillor Orsatti.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one that I forgot about. Jennifer Richardson that had organized the car rally, which was to take place this month, has been, I just had received information rescheduled to the weekend of April 30th to allow more people to sign up in better weather. And it's a $10 registration, and the money goes to the food bank. But you can go online to Jennifer Richardson, get all the details and sign up, and many local businesses have been supporting that as well. And I know that Councillor Rob Nicol has donated a prize package to Jennifer to hand out on behalf of his Ward 7. So thank you for getting ahead of me, Councillor Nicol, and I'll step up to the plate.
Thank you. Seeing no more hands, we'll go on to item number 12, which is the confirming bylaw. And I'll ask Councillor Payne and Councillor Nicol to move and second the confirming bylaw, please. All in favor? That is carried. And finally, our adjournment for this evening. So I'll ask Councillor Ices and Councillor Van Berkel to move and second our adjournment. And ask any staff who wish to, if they want to turn their camera on, and so we can thank them for all of the work. I mean, we sit here for an hour and a half or so, but the real work, hours and hours and hours of it, come from these people who prepare this agenda. So thanks again for being here tonight, and have a great rest of the evening, everyone. And we'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.